How's it going, guys? And welcome back to BL3's Forgotten, the series where I take a look at underused and not often talked about pieces of gear to determine whether or not they deserve to be remembered in the modern meta of the game or should be left behind and forgotten. And today we are taking a look at the boring gun. If you'd like to get the boring gun for yourself, you're going to want to fast travel over to Karas Canyon over on Pandora, immediately turning around and exiting out into Devil's Razor. Reason for that being we're actually going to be using this entry point to reset from, as spawning almost immediately out front of it is Antelope, which, upon being killed, has a chance to drop you the boring gun. The boring gun is a legendary Torgue shotgun able to come in any of the elements and firing 1 or 2 projectiles per shot for 1 to 2 ammo cost per shot respectively. The boring gun fires out a single sawblade projectile that has a very heavy downward arc, which upon making contact to the ground will split into 3 projectiles and rush along the ground. These projectiles will explode on impact with an enemy. Worth noting with this gun is that you can actually fire it up along walls as long as that initial contact happens with the wall itself. Now starting out here with ×1 versus ×2, I do think that both of them have their place, but generally I felt like ×1 was a hell of a lot better than the ×2, at least with where I tested within Mollywan Takedown. ×1 just felt like way better damage per projectile, which most of the time you're not going to be hitting more than 1 or 2 on a single humanoid enemy, meaning the ammo that you save from running the ×1 is definitely more worth it and allows you to probably land more projectiles on an enemy per mag. Like I said, ×2 definitely does still have its place, but that place is in a proper splash-oriented build with some AoE bonuses. But we'll get to that a little bit later. The boring gun, both ×1 and ×2, is a bit underwhelming. It's not terrible, but it's gonna be rough taking it through an entire run of anything for the most part. These projectiles do have some large AoE to them, and combining that with the unpredictability of the projectiles' movement as they roll, you will be downing yourself a hell of a lot, and it's kind of unavoidable. This doesn't make or break a gun for me, as there's plenty of weapons I adore that kill me constantly. The Flacker, my beloved, please return my calls. But the difference is that they dump out enough damage or have something else that make them fun enough to use that I can look past it. The boring gun does not. If anything, it feels tailor-made precisely to inevitably down yourself in a fight, all while having mid as hell damage. And I suppose, as the name implies, despite shooting sawblades, I do find it pretty damn boring to use. Also, maybe worth mentioning, this gun is next to worthless on Ties That Bind Amara or any grasp build, hence why you will be seeing a different build for this video. You need these projectiles to run on the ground to split, meaning if you grasp someone, that person is now immune from all damage you could potentially do to them with this gun. Not ideal. Now, the boring gun is actually a gun that I've heard a decent bit about throughout the years, and most of the time it's people saying that it's super underrated. And personally, I don't really find that to be the case. This gun has so many drawbacks to it without any of the damage necessary to back it up. However, that being said, this is another gun where we have to talk about it differently when it comes to Miss Game Balance herself, Mose. And I kind of have a feeling that it might be mostly Mose players that praise this gun. Because with Mose, while the damage can still feel a little middling at first, it's really not all that bad when you start to factor in the area coverage that this thing has. Between the way that the projectiles spread out and their pretty big AoE, the same things that kill you constantly, that damage is being applied to a huge radius. Enough so that either the ×1 or ×2 can be incredibly effective even into True Guardian Takedown. Enough so that Mose's Torgue cross promotion becomes gravely detrimental to your health and existence. However, if you play Mose without TCP, you have no bitches, no money, and no sauce. Your parents are also at least mildly disappointed. At least that's what they told me at their last swinger party. But got him, I fucked your dad. Fuck! Mom, I fucked your mom! And final thing to mention with this gun, if you are going to be using it, I highly recommend throwing on some additional projectiles if you have them available to you. Like I said, this gun does start as a single projectile before splitting when it makes contact with the ground. This means that any source of additional projectiles is going to give you 3 additional projectiles when it hits the ground. So this does mean if we consider the ×1 a ×3 and a ×2 a ×6, you can actually get up to a ×9 or ×12 with this gun. Overall though, I think the boring gun is a boring gun. Jesus fucking Christ, is that really all we could come up with? Those budget cuts, man, good lord. It's not terrible, but it is extremely underwhelming, especially with all the praise that I've heard this thing get. On a majority of the Vault Hunters, it is alright at best, and at worst, depending on your build, literally you're unable to hit your enemy. However, with Mose, you definitely can have a damn good time with this, as long as you're not a bitch and can handle seeing the fight for your life screen very, very often. But look, if you really want to fire sawblades, the rebound is right there. That's gonna about do it for this one though. I hope hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, definitely consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, all of that. I'll be live right after this video goes up, right here on YouTube and also over on my Twitch channel, where there will be a link to down in the description below. And just under that is a link to my Discord server where you can come and join and hang out. But with that all being said, I hope to see you guys in the next one.